Hello and welcome to the Monday, October 27th, 2025 edition of the SANS Internet Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich, recording today from Jacksonville, Florida. And this episode is brought to you by the SANS.edu Graduate Certificate Program in Purple Team Operations. Got two diaries this weekend. First one from Guy being French Canadian, so his first language is French. He's actually seeing quite a few phishing emails coming in French, and then identical emails pretty much coming in English. This is something that I've always a little bit wondered about, how much of the language of these phishing emails is targeted to the recipients. Of course, in particular in Canada, it's a little bit hard to tell if a particular person speaks French, doesn't speak French, but interesting that essentially the same email is being used for French as well as English. And I guess attackers are trying to appeal then more to speakers of French because they are often more used. I notice from Germany as well that the majority of phishing emails is in English. So whenever there is one in a person's native language, if that's not English, that of course has a somewhat higher chance of success. And then we have a second diary this weekend from Didier. Didier attended recently the hack.lu conference, and at the conference he saw an interesting presentation from developers of Kaitai Struct. This is a tool that is being used to analyze malware. Often it basically allows you to analyze various binary formats. Well, they now have a Web IDE available that essentially implements everything in JavaScript and allows you, without having to install any specific tool, to simply just run this Kaitai Struct tool. Looks pretty neat, and I think particularly for someone who is just occasionally doing some malware analysis, probably a real nice tool to have. Feels a little bit like CyberChef, but of course more with the focus on binary analysis, while CyberChef is really just sort of for file conversion and the like. So there is some overlap between these tools, but for reverse analysis, definitely take a look at Kaitai Struct, the Web IDE. And on Friday, I mentioned the new vulnerability in the Windows Server Update Service, or WSUS, and this vulnerability is now, first of all, being exploited in the wild. Huntress published some data about that. Secondly, Microsoft on Friday did release a patch for this vulnerability for versions of Windows Server going back to 2019. So even Windows Server 2019 did get an update here for this. Microsoft also published an advisory going with this update with additional details about this vulnerability. The big takeaway here is, number one, it's being exploited actively. It does not require authentication. It does allow for arbitrary code execution on your update server. And with that, it also then allows the compromised update server to, of course, push malicious updates to any client that does pull updates from this update server. So it's not just affecting this update server, it's affecting the entire network that is using this particular update server and trusting this update server for updates. So that's really the big issue here. Most of these update servers are hopefully not exposed to the internet, but definitely this is a high priority patch that you must install today, if at all possible. And then CSO Online has a good article that summarizes something that I have been ranting about in the past a few times. Actually, I think I mentioned it at one of the RSA keynotes. Couldn't find it anymore, so probably old enough, long enough ago where Google sort of lost it. But the problem here is that we see more and more attacks that actually exploit vulnerabilities in network security devices that, are, as the title of the article says, 90s area flaws. So very easy exploitable vulnerabilities that are being taken advantage of in devices that are supposed to actually make us more secure. One statistics that I think comes from MITRE here that's quoted in this article that I think particularly tells the story is that about a third of attacks are starting out, or sort of the initial entry point now is an attack against a network security device. only half of that, like 16%, I think it was, is phishing. And we spent a lot of effort on preventing and fighting phishing, probably still a good thing. And maybe the fight actually made it that it's no longer sort of your number one problem, but really discouraging that these expensive enterprise security devices are really opening us up to more problems than they may fix in some cases. Definitely something to pay attention to. And yes, as always, keep those devices patched. I think every week we have a new vulnerability here. The article also lists like some 0-day vulnerabilities that had been exploited in these devices in the last 2 years. Well, and that's it for today. So thanks again for listening, and thanks for recommending it. Thanks also to everybody who attended my talk in Augusta on Saturday. If it will be available online, I'm not sure. I'll definitely note and link to it. And yeah, it's always good to run into people that reach out and let me know that they're listening, because sitting here in my office and just talking to the camera and my dog, maybe a cat sitting on the desk here, well, makes sort of we wonder sometimes whether or not anybody's actually listening. So thanks, and talk to you again tomorrow. Bye.